Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to life.
Hey everybody, welcome to the pod. My name is Heather, and who are you fellas?
Hey there, Heather. It's me, Jamie.
Hello.
Hey Heather, Tyler.
Hi Tyler.
Hello, good morning, Heather. It's Joe.
Morning. Hi Joe. How is everybody today?
Yeah, pretty good.
Good.
Okay.
It's good, yeah.
Good.
Getting
Good.
warm. It's weird. The weather is
The
just...
weather is weird. You can tell by the way we're all dressed.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've got fall on this side of the room. We've got, I don't know what y'all
I'm usually
are.
the shorts guy.
Summer-ish.
And
We're just clinging on to a little bit of
You are.
Just holding on tight.
Tyler's got his sandals on.
I
always.
know. I'm usually the shorts guy.
I know you are the shorts guy, but Joey's sporting the shorts
He's got
today.
it. Hey, keeping the legacy going. Love it.
All right. Yeah, we've decided it is freezing in our office.
Almost all the time.
So I was like, it's hot outside, but I'm willing to
Yeah.
fall in.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Even when it's summer here, I will wear a long sleeve shirt.
yes,
because it's
freezing
so cold.
in the office. Yeah. Jeremy's also sporting the fall gear over at the producer
Yeah.
Jeremy can.
station.
Little
He's got
flannel
his
over there.
flannel on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right. What did you guys do? Anything fun this weekend?
I did remember the Rhymers came in this
The
weekend.
Rhymers did come in this weekend.
So that was nice. So they're staying in our little apartment. So we had dinner with them on Friday. And then we had dinner again on Saturday and fire pitted with them. So that was very
nice.
fun. Yeah, so it was just kind of a hangout with the Rhymers kind of
Good.
weekend. Then we had Esther do a sleepover last night. And that's always a lot of fun.
Yes.
She's a hoot.
She is a hoot.
Yeah, so yeah. And then Thursday, yeah, we had a big weekend. So Thursday, Sarah closed on her condo in Virginia Beach.
Congratulations,
Congrats,
Sarah.
Sarah.
It was a very big event. And
Yes.
so we went out and celebrated with dinner, and she took all my money for closing, and then I put dinner on a credit card. So
Okay.
because I didn't have any cash left.
Very good.
Because the girl had stripped me of cash
Yes.
for her closing. So
But she's paid you back.
I got the last installment this morning.
Okay, good.
So, yeah. She's paid me back over the weekend. Yep.
Good girl.
Yeah.
Where did you go to celebrate dinner?
Let me think. Hot Tuna.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
Hot
she
Tuna,
loves
that's a
that place.
Good place.
It is a really good place. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We got there 5 minutes before happy hour ended and ordered all the things off the happy.
There you go.
We didn't even have time to look at the menu.
Yes,
We just
you're just
started
like,
doing-
all, bring
we-
it all.
Yeah, that's what we did. It was
Yeah.
a lot of fun. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Fun. Tyler, did you do anything fun this weekend?
We did, actually.
You had a date.
We did. Had a date night.
Yeah.
But even the morning of, afternoon of, we went to the aquarium.
Oh,
in Virginia
Oh,
Beach.
yes.
That's awesome. So
Yeah, I love an
can-
aquarium.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's been a long time. I went to one in Atlanta when I was young, which is huge.
Oh, I love that one.
It's awesome. This one is smaller, but it was
Yeah.
it was still cool. It was just
I've never been.
You ever been to this one? You should go.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
It's really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
they got
Silas,
some
I'm
good.
sure, was
He was
enamored.
just he was
Yes.
just looking at everything. It was
so we
awesome.
need to take Esther there. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
She would love that.
The one
Yeah.
in Manio is also really good.
Manny?
Manio, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Man,
Yeah,
okay.
it's really good.
We'll check that out.
Yep.
But then we ended the night. Praise God to the Farrells. I don't know if I have a camera here. The Farrells thank y'all so much hooking us up with daycare because they took Silas. We went to Blanca for the night.
Oh.
Y'all haven't been there. It's incredible.
Yeah.
They only do like 4 entrees a night that get mixed up. They do different things. They got like 6 appetizers, then 3 desserts that they all change up all the time. So it's
that
really
Norfolk?
Nice.
good. Right off of Granby Street. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
highly recommend.
Nice date night then.
Very
Great
cool.
date night. Really
Good.
needed that because
Yeah.
man, 3 months we blinked and it's gone.
Yeah.
We hadn't been out, so yeah, we needed that.
Very cool.
And Joe always recommend. He's like, hey, make sure you get those date nights planned.
Yeah,
And always on. He's like, all right,
for sure.
let's do that.
Yep.
It was needed.
Very cool.
Good.
Yeah.
What'd you do, Joey?
It was my son's 6th birthday.
Wow,
I know,
how
I
is
have a
that
6-year-old
possible?
already. It does feel like all the cliches, right? It
Yeah.
feels like yesterday
Yep.
that he was born and everything. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm
so
trying
3 months went by like that. 6 years
6
goes
years,
by
too.
just like that too.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm trying to figure out which style of birthday I like better because like off-site costs a lot more money. So we
Yeah.
saved a lot more money by having it here, but it took up the whole weekend.
Yeah.
Like all day Friday, cleaning and getting ready for what our house does not normally look like. Here we go. Putting on this facade that you
Yeah.
know, we have this perfectly clean house and all the things. She cooked a bunch of stuff and all that. So it ended up being great. Yeah.
Good.
It was good.
What was the theme?
Pokemon. Which
man.
is awesome because I grew up on Pokemon. I get to chat with him, Tyler and Doug. Like we all grew up on that, and it stood the test of time. He loves it now too. It was awesome.
Very
That's
good.
Yep. And then you got to watch football all day Sunday.
Do we bring that up every week in the pod? Is it a pod thing? I guess it has to be, right?
Can.
Football's so big.
Yeah.
And,
Did you
it's
want to
fall.
talk about it?
No.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay, let's move
All
on.
right.
The 1 o'clock games were good. That was fun
Yeah.
to watch. And then
Thursday
4
night was
o'clock,
good.
4 o'clock
My
came and
boys.
went. And then I enjoyed watching the Sunday night game.
Yeah.
My Cowboys are not doing too well. Audience.
Yeah.
Not doing too hot this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Vikings pulled out another win. Just saying.
Just saying.
My some of my
8-2.
kids were at that game down in Florida. They were having a good time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as your husband said, sometimes it takes field goals. Doesn't
Yeah.
always look pretty.
It was not
But
pretty.
a
It was
win's
not
a
a pretty
win.
win.
It was like,
But
But it was a
won.
win.
It was a win.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. We were also down in Hot Tuna area this weekend.
Yeah.
We ended up going to Chick's for lunch on Friday because we were doing a bunch of errands. Nate had some work stuff down in that area with a client, so we did some of that stuff and then went to Trader Joe's, one of my favorite stops.
Bonnie's too.
Yep. And some other grocery kind of things down there. I love going to a grocery store. It's like my favorite thing. Did our Costco run, all that good stuff
nice.
down there.
Yeah.
But we had otherwise we had a pretty chill weekend. We had spent some time with friends. But yeah, it was a pretty chill weekend for us. I'm trying to think. Nate was like trying to remind me of what we did this weekend. I think that's it. Just our little Chicks.
Was it
We
Chicks
didn't
by
go-
the beach or Chicks?
No.
And there's two, right?
Yeah, no, it was the Chicks over by Hot Tuna. Yeah, I'm trying to think of. We didn't really do anything else because I was not feeling super great on Saturday. I was like just wanting to kind of lay low.
Yeah.
Residual Italian.
No, like cold, stuffy,
Yeah.
congestion stuff.
Okay.
It's going around.
I feel like you can still hear it in my voice a little bit. But you guys, it's Veterans Day
It
today.
is. Yep.
So thank you to our veterans in the room,
Yeah.
Tyler, Jamie. Are you guys going to duke it out? Who's better, Army, Air Force?
Well,
Tyler wanted to start a fight
Yeah.
yesterday from stage.
his wife is in the Army,
She is.
so the Army is the better branch.
It's a tough
So-
fight you got here.
It's always a tough fight. But I will say, I have two in-laws that are two colonels, 30 years.
Yeah.
They both recommended I do Air Force.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, my brother-in-law, when I enlisted, my brother-in-law was an Air Force guy, and he said, you should join the Air Force. It's really easy. That's what he told me.
for the Air Force for a
And I
reason.
was a
Embrace it.
17-year-old kid looking for a challenge, and I was like, that's why I'm not joining the Air Force. So,
All right.
You've earned that,
Yeah.
and I respect it.
Yeah.
This is the way it is.
So my dad started in the Army, and then he retired Navy. So,
Okay.
yeah, he served in the Army for, I think it was 7 years, and then was civilian for a number of years, went back as a Navy chaplain.
Wow.
And I think he had to go Navy because when he went back in, that was he met the age requirement at that point
Yeah.
to be a chaplain. So he served as Navy chaplain and then retired that way.
That's pretty
yeah.
cool.
And then as a Navy chaplain, you also get to work with the Marine Corps. So
Right.
he
Yep.
Yes,
he
the
loves
men's
that.
department of the Navy, as they would say.
yeah.
So,
That was my buddy Ray. That was his deal. He was a Marine and then a naval chaplain. But
Yeah.
his favorite part of being a naval chaplain
Was
was
working
being
with the Marines.
Yeah,
Yep.
because he
Yep.
loved the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And I didn't join the Navy because as a 17-year-old kid enlisting, I didn't want to wear bell bottoms.
Right. I know.
You got to have important markers, you know.
That's-
So for me, I was like, there's no way I'm wearing that uniform.
Navy uniform is brutal for
Right?
a while.
It was.
I mean,
I was like, there's no way I'm putting that thing on.
yeah. Yeah.
I say between Marines and Army, y'all have the best
Yeah.
uniforms.
Yeah,
I'd
those
say.
So I
uniforms
wanted to join the
are-
Marine Corps, but I also wanted to enlist when I was 17,
17.
and I couldn't fit in boot camp between my junior and senior year of high school. It was too long. So
Marine,
Army
yeah.
was by default. That was the only thing that worked.
So how long did you serve, Jamie?
I was 9 years in the reserves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. How long were you in?
4
Tyler?
years.
4 years. Yeah.
So
And you
good
were as a chaplain? Okay.
as a chaplain, loved it. Did Hawaii, Georgia, Alabama. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Yeah,
Very good.
that's awesome.
Interesting to hear your thought process and joining.
Yeah, well, when you're 17, that's the
Uniform.
stuff you're thinking about.
Uniform,
Yeah.
a challenge.
17.
Yeah. Yeah. Enlisted on my birthday, my 17th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was determined that I was going in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all both for your service.
Yes. Thank you so much.
And everyone out there listening.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of great veterans in our church.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yep.
many amazing people who've done some amazing things. So
Yes.
like my reserve duty was so tame, and it was the reserves like back in the day when the reserves was actually the reserves. You know, nowadays most
It's very
reservists
different.
are getting called up on the regular.
Yeah.
So
That's why I said no.
yeah, it was very different when I was in. So I skated through, but yeah, there's some folks in our church who've
Yeah.
they've just done so much.
I
So
know.
very grateful.
It's quite it's really neat to be in this community.
Yep.
And Tyler, when you had everyone stand, I know everyone's so humble, so they don't
They
like
don't wanna
doing
do
that.
that. Yep.
But yeah, like so many people
Yeah.
in our church stand up because
Yep.
we have a very strong military
Yep.
presence represented here. So we're very grateful.
Yep.
Okay, well, our Bible reading challenge, we are in John still, and this week we were reading from John 9. I love
Such a great
this
chapter.
chapter.
Okay, it's probably my favorite too.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just,
so
good.
what'd y'all pick out this week from this chapter?
So it's the man born blind. If
Yes.
you haven't done your reading
Yep.
just yet. So yeah, I mean, go ahead and share
Yeah.
your.
What do you love
Tyler?
about
What
it?
do you love about this?
I think honestly, I love the opening part when they first see him. Jesus, why is he blind? Did somebody else sin? Or
Yeah.
did he sin? And Jesus, no, it's for
Yeah.
the glory of God. It's gonna be shown through him, and it just upturns all of our. I don't want to call them superstitious stuff with God, like how this thing happened. Could
Yeah.
God like all those things that we do?
kind of our preconceived notions
And
about things.
Isn't it
Yeah.
interesting that we often still believe that?
We have
Yes.
those things
For sure.
We do.
You know,
Yeah.
bad things happen because I did something bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
We still have that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he just flips it on his head.
Yeah.
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 I had a conversation and a prayer around that specific thing yesterday. But I pulled the same thing. Like the disciples were like, their immediate reaction was like this is a punishment of something gone wrong. And they even went a step further. Oh, he was born that way. So what did his parents do
Right.
wrong? I was like, wow.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, the ending of it is kind of the zinger. So, you know, they have this conversation back and forth. The religious leaders are mad at Jesus for working on the Sabbath. That argument, I mean, they're relentless. It's like chapter after chapter, they do the same thing. And then Jesus at the end is, I think, talking to his disciples, and the Pharisees overhear him, and they say, "Are you calling us blind?" And he said, "If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty, but you remain guilty because you claim you can see." Yeah, so, you know, there's being blind is
Not the problem.
not the problem.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, so like that's a good word for any of us. I was having a conversation with someone who, you know, feels really strongly that, you know, we need to be calling out, you know, all the evil. But it's almost like calling out the blind. So, you know, people who are blind should not be called out. They should be pointed to Jesus. And I think, you know, that's the difference. Like when you see Jesus on the attack, it's not against sinners per se. It's against people who portray themselves as not being sinners. It's always against the religious people, the evil people, the people that a lot of people in modern day church are wanting to call out are the very ones that's what Jesus is saying. Like, if you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty. Like, people who are dead in their sins, they need kindness, grace, and pointed to Jesus. It's the hard-headed religious legalists that Jesus regularly is calling out because they are leading people astray. Yeah. And I think, that's just a good word for our cultural moment. We are called to engage those who are far from Jesus, not condemn those who are far from Jesus. Yeah. And like, people get frustrated sometimes that we aren't taking a stand. And the stand I see here is Jesus saying, the blind you're not guilty if you're blind. We've talked about this before, but like, people who are dead in their sin, or what Paul describes even as held captive, like, you don't get angry at captives. You work to set them free. Yeah. So yeah, just that posture difference, I think, it stands out very strongly in this particular chapter.
And a lot of what you spoke on yesterday.
Yeah.
Which we'll dive into. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, great segue. So this week we were in week 6 of our Divided We Stand series.
Yes.
And the message was called
Divided.
Yeah. Which was very appropriate since we were in the week coming out of the election. And when you wrote the message, you didn't know what the outcome would be, or if we would even actually know who the winner of the election
If I was a betting man, I would have bet we wouldn't have known.
Right. Yeah. So I just want to know, like, how were you feeling this week leading into Sunday? Can you tell us? Can you give us a little inside scoop? Like, were you feeling?
Actually, I was a little relieved because I really thought I was going to be. When I wrote the message, I was thinking, "There's no way we're going to know by the first Sunday after Election Day who won this election." So yeah, I was a little on the relief side because I have a sense that the tension would have been much, much higher had the election still been hanging out there. So I had several conversations with people who were very downcast about the election. I also had conversations with people who were very happy about the results, but there was no tension around it.
People had either way. People had a couple of days to kind of sit in their feelings and process a little bit. So yeah, I think going into Sunday, despite where they landed, there was some processing that was able to happen. So it didn't feel as tense, I don't think, in the room as it could have felt.
Correct.
If we didn't know, or even if it was like the next day,
And because of that, like, I was not only grateful that there wasn't that tension in the room, but also, like, if the election had not been resolved, probably would have had to sit in that moment a little bit longer. But it was really nice to be able to just say, okay, that's behind us. Can we just get on with what we're supposed to be about? Like, we're supposed to be about making Jesus number one. And so many, you can say that till you're blue in the face. Most people are too caught up in the politics of it to think that way.
But I do love the intentionality of the teaching team to continue this series beyond the election.
Yeah.
With the election spin on it, it could have easily wrapped up last Sunday and all that, but to sit in that, mode for another few weeks, I think is really going to be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the opening illustration that you gave us, once you kind of talked through the immediacy of the election, was this illustration of sportsmanship.
Yeah.
And you guys, all of you in this space, grew up playing sports. So I would just love to know, like, how did you relate to Jamie's childhood experience? Did you connect with that story?
Tyler, you got to have a lot better stories than I do. I realized when I read that question, man, my sports history was not as good as I thought it was.
Did you have some bad moments?
Well, that's a story for a different kind of podcast. But yeah, I didn't have. We just had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun when I was playing high school baseball. So with that, there just wasn't like a ton of like coaching figures and stuff in my life that I can pull from. But I mean, sports taught me a lot. Like I love all that about it. But yeah, I know you do though. With the basketball, you play.
I got basketball. Either Sam and I coaching had some experiences with that particular, and one that I can share. We were, I think I was 9 or 10, and we played this. We were a boys team, and there was this high school girls team that was practicing on this other court. Like we're split both sides. 10-year-old boys. We think we can take these girls. And long story short, we got annihilated, as we should have been. We're whatever.
Interesting.
And we thought, but you would think a 10-year-old boy thinks they can take LeBron. It just.
Yeah.
And so we were, boo-hooing, crying.
Oh, for real?
And would not go shake their hands because we were we were just in tears, just 'cause we lost. But, yeah. So
man, not only did you get spanked by the girls team, then you started crying.
You start crying.
Like,
that's brutal.
Wow, that's
I love
terrible.
that story.
Oh,
so
man.
learn a good lesson.
Yes.
But yeah, so
Yes. So yeah, do you guys see, like, I know you've both coached now too, like both of you have had some experience coaching. So have you seen, so Jamie's, your illustration was that like back when
our
you were
coaches,
playing,
it was all about sportsmanship.
Yeah.
Even more like, winning and stuff obviously mattered, but even if you won and you were a bad sport in winning, you would get in serious trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you would have been forced to like get yourself together
We
and
did.
go
We were
shake those girls' hands.
yes.
Yeah.
So we eventually
Tell them
did.
that they
in the
did
story,
a good
yes.
job. You kicked our butt. Way to go.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
So like now, do you see that happening as you coach? Do you see that there's a level of expectation to like have to train kids up to be good sports?
Yeah, I think it's a great burden to carry as a coach, to try and build up these kids' character, especially at the age they're at right now. We're at like 6 years old, so like we're really getting into these few years where they're shaping who they are and how they treat people and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that part is exciting and it keeps me wanting to coach because I don't know yet if I can handle like all the extracurricular, like the parents' involvement and stuff like that. I always said that I would get out of coaching after a certain amount of time, but I think I'm going to keep going because that part of it is really fun. And I don't know if we're allowed to plug something like this, but Ted Lasso too, like is some of the best lessons in sportsmanship with sports that he gives, and like it makes me excited. Like he's all about the character of them off the pitch. That's what they call it over there, by the way. The pitch, not the field. Yeah.
Yeah. There's other parts about Ted Lasso that we probably shouldn't plug.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
not a plug. This is not
Not
a
an
plug.
endorsement.
Yeah, not an endorsement.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely had to learn how to, when kids are in the moment, they're heated, they're mad, they lost, to help them to shake hands.
Yep.
We had a couple experiences that the kids did not do that as we're lining them up to do it.
Yeah.
Then parents get mad, coaches get mad. You need to make those kids do it. And we're like, hey, it's definitely needed. But I had to learn a lot of lessons to help them to see why. Like it's being a good sport. You want to show that even though you lost, that you can lose gracefully, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
Do you
easy.
think there's been like a little bit of a shift in culture where that's not as prominent now? Like it seems like back in our day, it was like the expectation. And now, it feels like you hear a lot more about parents that are acting fools at games and
Yeah.
things like that. Like where that wouldn't have been so much when we were kids. Maybe it was. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. There's the Michael Jordan story too, where they lost to Detroit and walked off the court without shaking any hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's big.
That was 20 years ago, so,
That's who y'all call the greatest.
well,
It's
Interesting.
yeah,
those things, yeah.
he definitely was. But yeah, so like, there are moments of that kind of thing,
Yeah.
but even that was like such a scandal because, that is the expectation that you
Right.
should do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's fundamentally shifted or not. I'm not around it enough
It just is so prevalent, and winning is so prevalent. Like it's all throughout our culture now. Sports, like it just feels like much more than a game and stuff. So when you lose, I think some of those expectations do falter a little bit for sure.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, you after that you kind of shifted us into just kind of considering things that matter. That was kind of what you were getting us to. And one of the things that you talked about was the time test.
Right.
So like what actually matters? And you said, will this matter 500 years from now?
Yeah.
That's like a big amount of time because then you're like, does anything matter?
Does anything matter?
500 years from now.
You know, in the outlet I wrote on Friday, that came out on Friday, I cited a president that was like 120 years ago that I'm pretty sure 99% of people had never heard of. So even if you do 100 years, it probably doesn't matter really. Like that's not a bad figure for a time test either. Like, is anyone going to remember who was president 100 years from now? Probably not. So yeah, like focusing on those things that genuinely matter. And that's what Paul was like. We often think of, like he said, think about the realities of heaven, because that's real. And he says your real life is hidden in Christ, which is kind of interesting because we often think of, heaven and in Christ, like those are I won't say less important, but less real. Like it's somewhere out there. It's this intangible. But Paul is saying like that's the most important thing. That's the real thing. And what you're experiencing now is the scrimmage. It's the warm up to the real thing. So yeah, he's trying to get us to think about heaven. And oftentimes when we hear people talking or thinking about heaven, we think of them as mystic or dreamer or, you're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good. Well, Paul seems to think that we're not nearly heavenly minded enough. Like we should anchor our thoughts on that because that'll give us perspective on everything else. Yeah.
I thought the time test did an interesting thing because I got stuck there for a minute too. I'm like, 500 years, what does anything matter? But interestingly enough, it kind of spun it the opposite way for me. I'm like, man, it made my mission here on earth feel like it's going to go quick.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what does matter. I think that's what Paul was trying to do.
Yeah. That's good. Jamie, you said what you're going through matters, but how you conduct yourself is more important. Right. So I think that was like a really good statement because when you say that initially, like, will it matter 500 years from now? Then it feels like, but that makes it feel like then everything doesn't matter.
Right.
It's like, no, it still matters, but it's how you conduct yourself is the more important thing.
Yeah.
So we've all gone through things where we haven't conducted ourselves well. Would you agree?
I mean, Joey has, definitely.
I mean, Joey hasn't, yeah. But I think all of us maybe
Still
have.
got time.
So, right. But maybe there are a few times when we've managed to face something difficult and we've happened to do so with some sort of grace and dignity. So what lessons have you learned where your conduct has like actually benefited others around you, or like that you can look back on and say, okay, I think I handled this difficult situation well. That you can like say, yeah, this was, I had my eyes fixed on Jesus, and this is how I want to do this most of the time. I don't always,
right,
but I did do it okay.
Yeah, it's way easier to come up for me with examples of the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So the things that I've done that I didn't handle well and caused things to escalate or whatever, it's way, I have way more examples of that probably. But yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of even just church conflict kind of things where my role has been helpful to me to kind of force me to be more intentional about how I'm responding or reacting and to do so in a way that I'm mindful of my conduct and wanting to embody, Christ values into a situation that have de-escalated tensions and brought reconciliation or whatever. I mean, I can run through a pretty decent list of those kinds of things probably.
Yeah.
Likewise, more times of screwing it up rather than getting it right. But those times have helped me to be more gracious, and because I know my story, legalistic Larry kind of stuff. But yeah, just learning that what you do matters and how you conduct yourself, especially for the follower of Jesus. Like, we represent so much more than ourselves, and so to take that seriously.
Yeah. I think with this, you're dealing with people and real problems and stuff, and you're trying to help manage conflict through that, and it just makes some of these lessons we've learned in life so critical to always have. Like, we teach a lot of it around here. We teach Matthew 18, and to always go about those values, like it becomes pretty easy to see when you've handled it not as well, and when you've handled it pretty good and stuff like that. And plus, like, the consequences of it, we have to handle it the best way we can, and and through the lens of Christ, we have to. It's too important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love each of you said that you've handled it worse than you've handled it better. But what's interesting about that is I think it shapes, like, the times that we haven't handled it well.
Yes.
Teaches us how to handle them well, right? So we can, like, learn from those mistakes. And I think it also, like, points us to, like, we do it best in community.
Yep.
So I think the times that we, like, go rogue or we try to figure out stuff on our own is the times when we tend to screw it up.
Yeah.
So I think that when we do it, when we happen to bring, like, a friend in with us and say, like, I got to figure this thing out, or I'm facing this challenge, I'm facing this difficulty, I need some help. Like, that tends to be when our conduct is usually a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure.
So the big idea for this week was people won't believe in the truth of the gospel until they believe the gospel is true for you. So kind of the, I guess, add-on or the tagline to that would be, if the gospel isn't changing you, then it isn't true to those who observe you.
Right.
So how does that just sit with you guys? Like, what do you take away from that when you first hear it?
I absolutely loved that big idea, and how it sat with me was it resonated with something that I've been kind of, I guess, coaching with people or praying with people through recently, and that is because I've been stuck in the past playing the comparative game with hearing directly from God. I know other people in my life that do, and I struggle with that. Like, please just speak directly to me. I want to hear your voice. And I just lost sight of everything he was trying to tell me through different ways, through people, through interactions and stuff. So that's how it resonated with me, the big idea. And that's kind of how I've also been, praying with people through that. Like, if don't just think that you're missing out because you might not directly be here. Pay attention to what's going on around you. He's speaking to you just in a different way.
Yeah, that's really good.
For me, it's just sat on, like, this starts in my house. Because with how I am with Karina, how I love on her, how I show her the love of Jesus, like, sacrificially, and I don't do that well all the time at all. But then I got this little guy who's watching everything I do, and some of this will come out when I preach next week. But, like, the weight of that is just like, wow, like, he's going to be watching everything I do. So if what I say about Jesus to him he doesn't see that in me, there's going to be this huge disconnect. And I just don't want that. So I'm going to let it change me. So show in the house first.
Yeah. So good.
That's really good.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's one of those statements that just really helps define the follower of Jesus. Because I think so many, Tyler, you just said, like, you're legal Larry, legalist Larry. Like, so many people have, like, I think struggle with this because they feel like they grew up in, like, a Christian household, but they can't really define like, am I a Christian? Did I cross this line of faith at some point? And so they feel like, well, I think there's a God. I would say that I believe there's, I think I believe. But it's like they're maybe questioning if they actually have placed their faith in him. And it's like, well, this is a great question to ask yourself. Like, do you see that you're growing in any of these areas? Like, do you find that someone else would identify the gospel in you?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Then that's kind of like this like litmus test, if you will, But if that's not true of you, then maybe you haven't actually placed your faith in Jesus. So I just think that's a really great question to kind of like wrestle with for your personal, like, am I really seeing fruit in my life for that? So Jamie, you then went through a bunch of stats, which I think are just always really interesting to point out to people, but stats about people's opinions of Christians. So a few of them, 55% would say that Christians are hypocritical, 54% are judgmental, 50% are self-righteous, and then some other runners-up would be arrogant, unforgiving, and disrespectful.
Yeah.
So
all pretty much the opposite of Jesus.
Yeah.
Would you guys say that for people that you would say are unbelievers, like, do you think that this is how they would define Christians? Like, do you know that they would say this would be true? Do they say other things about Christians?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's out there for sure. I think we're up against, Christians are also up against like narratives, that go beyond us out into the national media and into politics and stuff, like beyond our control. It's tough to get around, but then you also see stuff where we have that adage, man, Christians are, their own worst enemy, or we can't get out of our own way and stuff like that. That's what I thought of when I saw some of these. We just can't get out of our own way sometimes.
Yeah. I think the national narrative is a big deal because, I know plenty of Christians, that don't fall into those categories, so like, but I think generally speaking, that is the perception, which is interesting, in that, John Dixon, the
Bullies and Saints,
in the talk that he gave, he kind of talked about those two angles of perception of Christians, and the one is that narrative where, they're hypocritical, judgmental, unforgiving, all these things, and that's what is generally believed by people of Christians. But then they have in their mind the person that they know that is a Christian, and they think, well, I mean, but that person
is really
that person's really kind, and that, like, the world is better because they are in it. And I think that's more true than anything else. I think a lot of people have that perception of Christianity, but they also have someone in mind that they would think of that is a Christian that they know is living out their faith. And it does make a difference because they do believe, like, generally speaking, that's what I think of Christians. But boy, Uncle Todd, is just such a great guy, and the world would be better with more people like him. So I think, for us, like, knowing that, I think is significant because we're not going to do much to deconstruct what the national narrative is, but we can be that influence in someone's life that that really is going to be the thing that makes the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that points to, like, that the bigger picture is a little discouraging.
Yeah.
You also pointed out that people are really big fans of Jesus.
They still are. Like, Jesus is still very popular.
Yeah.
So
shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that ought to encourage all of us, because if we could reflect him better, then the Big C church wins.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we just need to keep our eyes on him and do our best to embody those kingdom values.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
you
really
shared.
encouraging.
Oh, go ahead.
That really encourages me, and I think it would encourage people who work wherever they work,
Yeah.
wherever they
Yeah.
are ever, that you do have this huge narrative, but you can be the difference in someone's life.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally
today,
can.
like
Yes.
to change their heart to Jesus.
Yep.
you know.
Yep. Yeah. That
But-
is so good. So you shared Louis Giglio's quote that
Which
said,
is just such a great name.
It is Louis Giglio.
Yeah. I love
Say
that.
it like 3
Nice
times
flow.
fast. Yeah. He says, Jesus changed who you are, so let him change your behavior.
Yeah.
So what makes this so difficult? Is it surrendering to self? Is it fear that Jesus will be misrepresented? Like, why is that such a difficult thing for us to allow happen?
Yeah, well, I think that's the tension point that I think Louis is addressing. In that is a lot of times, like, it's a subtle difference, but it is a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people try to perform their way to change or to acceptance by God, and what Louis is really getting at there is, like, we have been changed. That's what Paul says in this letter. Like, we have been changed. We were dead in sins. We're alive in Christ. We have a home in heaven. Now we just need to allow our behavior to catch up with the change that has already been wrought in us. So, so not performing to get there, but just allowing, like, that gets back down to that whole thing of, like, if my nature truly has been changed by this encounter with Christ, then I can just, as you talk about in the question, like, now I can surrender to the Holy Spirit's leadership in my life, and it will lead me to change, because He is the one that has done the change in me. Mm. The subtle thing that a lot of people get tripped up on is they're constantly trying to change in order to be something, and including being someone that God is happy with.
Mm-hmm. It's the surrender piece.
It's the surrender piece to say, like, no, he's already changed me. God, I don't have to do something to make God like me. He's already demonstrated his love for me. Now I can just allow him to lead and guide me,
right,
and stay surrendered to him, which is, like, it is a subtle difference, but I can see legalistic Larry over there nodding like, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Preach, Tyler. What you got?
I appreciate on that, because and I think you kind of hit on that in the last part of what you asked, Heather. Like, for me, I think part of it was that I feared that Jesus would be misrepresented by me, that he would be displeased that I wasn't taking the stand for stuff, or like being this person for him. And it was really a fear of punishment for that piece, I think was part of it. But, and Jamie, I think you hit it on the head. Like, that's, it's such a subtle tension of allowing, like, yielding to the Holy Spirit. There is quote unquote work for us to do, but, like, it's already done.
Right.
We're already there, and we're like, it's such so many ways you could describe it, but that's it.
Yeah.
That's the tension that we live in.
Yep.
So,
yeah. I'll give a good example of one of these and why it was so difficult. So I'm going to bring up one more time that in one of the episodes of that show, Ted Lasso, he says something that said, "Be curious, not judgmental." And right around the same time, as a staff, we were being challenged to have actual conversations with people that were on the other side of whatever issue. And so I went into those like having more conversations with people that I knew probably didn't agree with me on certain things, and I'm more balanced in life across the board than I ever have been, and it's because of these conversations. But at the same time, that still was difficult, because be curious, not judgmental. Like, ask questions to somebody that's on the other side and stuff like that. And I'm just thinking when asked here why are some of these things so difficult, it's because how quickly that can feel judgmental. Even when you're trying to be more like Jesus, it can feel like you can go from curious to judgmental really quick. And it just, even the conversations when you have the good intentions, it's still a pretty difficult thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then toward the back half of the message, your big encouragement to us was to set our sights on heaven, which you mentioned a little bit earlier. But Why do you think we don't do that as often as we should? Is it because we don't know what heaven is like? Is it because we just don't talk about it enough? But if that's kind of what Paul is urging us to do, why don't we do that?
Yeah, he's urging us to do that because what we think about is what changes us, right? So we're transformed by the renewing of our mind. So he's saying, get your mind in heaven, the reality of heaven. We don't know that much about heaven, even though Randy Alcorn wrote a book this thick on heaven.
So thick.
So it's so fascinating to me that he came up with nearly 500 pages on heaven when there's very little.
Randy got more information about heaven than John did about the book of Revelation.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I think part of it is like we have this weird thought about heaven where maybe it's better to think about, Paul used that term, but he also uses the term frequently, the kingdom of God, and I think like thinking of the kingdom maybe would help us to think about it a little bit more. Like what does the kingdom of God look like? Well, it looks like the values of Christ fully being
fully realized.
Fully realized, put your mind there, like into this place of where Jesus is, where everything is done according to his will. I mean, that's what heaven will be like, but that is the kingdom of God is a current reality, not just a vision of some, pie in the sky kind of thing. Like currently it's not fully realized, but there are citizens of this kingdom all over the world, and we are to be living out those values right now. The kingdom of God is at hand, is what John said. So it's here, and we can embody it, and our mind should be on those things. But I think it's partly hard because we think of heaven as this harp playing, cloud riding experience, and that's not what it is.
As you're talking about that, I'm thinking about your Easter message from last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just about the like all of the little parts that we are in our daily lives. So if you want a good message on
that was a good one.
what that looks like, I encourage you to go to your YouTube channel and look at last year's Easter message. So how would we start our day in heaven? You touched on this a little bit yesterday, but can you give us some, and maybe you guys can like share some ways that you would start your day in heaven?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we talk about around here all the time is just through the first 15. It's, I think maybe another way to say it is, before you allow the world to just kind of rush at you, and that happens, like if your go-to is, morning news feed or, turning on the TV, or like if that's your normal go-to, then the first thing that's hitting you is the worries of the world. Mm-hmm. So like what you're trying to do in this starting your day in heaven is you're trying to start your day in such a way that your primary thought is about Jesus and his kingdom. So how do you best do that? I mean, I guess it could look different for different people. For me, it's, opening up my Bible app and spending that time reading and reflecting and praying before I start scrolling through all the things.
Other stuff.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the same. Like this, I've said it several times. This Bible reading plan is awesome.
Yeah.
It's super. Just reading a chapter and then spending the rest of the week reading that same chapter is incredible. And so taking time to do that, I think is just super easy. Mm-hmm. But then what's been helpful for me is that whole 2-minute thing. Just take wherever you get to your job, take 2 minutes, sit in silence, try to connect with God that way. Or what's been helpful too is because I'm becoming less legalistic. I always used to think it has to be, I got to sit and read it this way, this time, every single time. Mm-hmm. And for some people, connecting with God in nature is easier.
Yep.
Or going to, a park or doing some art or whatever it is that helps you to connect with God to do it that way and find your piece of heaven with him, spending that time, however it makes you feel connected, I guess.
Yeah, I strive for consistency, but I'm in one of the least consistent time frames of my life with two little. So I've even tried to set my alarm earlier. Well, that's the days they get up earlier.
Right.
Yeah, or I can get into the office earlier and have some quiet time. But then I have days where I got to, take them out and about to drop them off and everything. So it looks different every day. So I always focus my time first thing, setting my eyes on him and on heaven is pretty quick most days. And so my focus is really, how can I do it throughout the day? Yeah. That's been a theme for me for the last month or two, what it looks like throughout the day. And I loved your illustration of the weeds, like preventing that new nature from thriving. And I thought, you got me yesterday. As soon as you started talking about it, I was like, I've heard this analogy so many times. There's nothing new that I can hear about a plant and weeds. And you got me again. I was like, oh, that's so good, man. Like, that's so good, especially because, like, those are the things we don't even feed and take care of that come in and overtake us. So, like, one of my focus is throughout the day, there are plenty of weeds as I'm trying to hit these little pockets of staying with him throughout the whole day. These weeds are steady coming at me. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good because, that was the other encouragement, was just to retreat to heaven frequently.
Yep.
And so, I think that's so good to just be mindful of, we are, whether it's in seasons of life that we're in or, if it's whatever it is, there can be these times that we can just, like, if throughout the day, just break away for a few moments and reset, have another time of, like, okay, my mind is on heaven. I gotta, there's a lot coming at me.
And you can do that. Like, Joe, to your thing, I've shared this with parents who are in that season that you're in right now. It is so difficult to have, like, focus time. So, I was thinking about the song that we sang yesterday, which came from the teachings of Jesus. Look at the sparrows, and they don't have. So, like, what Jesus was doing is saying, here's something in everyday life that you can look at, and you can be reminded of a heavenly thing in that moment. Yeah. So you look at a sparrow, and you're reminded of God is so good. Like, he's so faithful. He's caring. He cares for that sparrow, and if he cares for the sparrow, isn't he going to care for me? So, like, as you're hustling your kids around, like, start thinking of, man, as a father, my primary thing is, like, I'm trying to get my kids to the places that are important for them, so where they can grow and develop and be safe. And, man, if I'm doing that for my kids, what is my Father doing for me?
Yes.
And you just, all of a sudden now, you're thinking of heaven while you're doing the things. Yep. And it doesn't have to be like, separate. I got to get done with the things so I can think about heaven. Yeah. No, you can actually think about heaven while you're doing the things.
It is your mindset. So right. It's constant.
Right. So that's really key. Like, if you're going to retreat to heaven throughout your day, you're going to have idle time. And for me, idle time's my enemy. That's when weeds, really will get a hold of me. And so, like, I've tried to repurpose a lot of my idle time, but busy time is also, can be a thing. And so, just trying to say, like, how can I? John Ortberg talks about, and I don't think it was original with him, but, like, how long during the day can I keep my mind tethered to the things of heaven? Like, how can I, every minute of every day, like, how many minutes a day can I keep my mind tethered to the things of heaven? And you're not going to do that by retreating to a monastery. You got to figure out, how do I do that in the activities of my day?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great challenge to try to pull off.
That is so good, because I'm desperate for perspective, and that's what I go to God with all the time. Lord, give me back the perspective I need to go forth with what is about to happen, or what meeting or anything. And so to shift that, like, even thinking of that, the sparrow situation, that is immediate perspective right there.
Yep.
Man, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
I'll check back in a couple weeks.
All right.
All right. Well, that's all we've got time for today. We hope you'll join us as we continue our Divided We Stand series this Sunday. We'll be on campus at 9 and 10:45. Or you can always join us at 1 o'clock on our YouTube channel. Thanks for being here, friends. Go and be love.